What if I told you that the person who failed almost every test in high school is now a millionaire while your class valedictorian is drowning in debt and still living paycheck to paycheck? Sounds unfair, right? It is. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. It's also completely predictable. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why intelligence might be the one thing secretly sabotaging your financial future. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't just theory. It's backed by cold, hard research, and it might completely flip everything you thought you knew about success. If this already has you curious, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button right now. It helps more than you know. And if you're new here, subscribe, because we're just getting started. Let me paint you a picture. I have a friend, brilliant guy, straight A's his entire life, perfect SAT scores, graduated from one of the top universities in the country with honors. Everyone said he was destined for greatness. Fast forward 15 years. He's stuck in a middle management position he hates. He drives a 10-year-old car, his student loans are still hanging over his head like a dark cloud, and every time we grab coffee, he talks about all these business ideas he's been researching for years but never actually started. Now here's where it gets interesting. Remember that kid in high school who could barely string a sentence together during presentations? The one teachers always worried about? The one who took the easy classes and scraped by with C's? Yeah, that guy now owns 3 rental properties, runs a successful landscaping company, and just bought a vacation home in Florida. How does this make any sense? I spent years trying to figure this out, and what I discovered genuinely shocked me. Let me take you to Sweden for a moment. Researchers there conducted one of the most comprehensive studies ever done on intelligence and income. We're talking nearly 60,000 men. They tracked their IQ scores from military assessments and then followed their earnings for over a decade using actual government wage records. No guessing, no estimates, just pure data. And at first, everything looked exactly how you'd expect. Higher IQ meant higher paychecks. Smart people earned more than average people. Average people earned more than below average people. The world made sense. Order was restored. Justice prevailed. But then, something bizarre happened. Around the $55,000 income mark, the correlation started breaking down. And when researchers looked at the absolute top earners, the 1%, they found something that should make every overachiever stop and think. The wealthiest people in the study scored slightly lower on intelligence tests than their peers just below them. Let that sink in for a second. The richest weren't the smartest. They were actually a little bit dumber. Now, before you start throwing a party for your mediocre test scores, let me be clear. These wealthy individuals weren't stupid. They were still highly capable people. But what this study reveals is absolutely crucial. Once you cross a certain threshold of ability, raw intelligence stops being the deciding factor. Something else takes over. And that something else? It's often the exact set of traits that people with average intelligence have been forced to develop their entire lives. This is where it gets really good. So stick around, because I'm about to break down the 5 specific reasons why supposedly dumb people often build wealth faster than geniuses. And if you're finding this valuable, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Seriously, you might change how they see their own potential. Reason number 1, they have what psychologists actually call stupid grit. And yes, that's a real term. I didn't make it up to make myself feel better about my own questionable life choices. Caroline Miller, who studied this phenomenon extensively, defined stupid grit as pursuing goals at all costs, even when it might hurt you, even when everyone around you is saying you should quit. Think about Mount Everest climbers for a second. When they're near the summit, they're exhausted. They're running out of oxygen. The weather is turning dangerous. Every rational instinct screams at them to turn back. But many of them push forward anyway. They call it summit fever, and sometimes, tragically, it costs them their lives. Now, obviously, that's the extreme. That's stupid grit gone too far. Miller contrasts this with authentic grit, the sustainable kind of persistence that doesn't destroy you in the process. But here's what most of us don't want to admit. We give up way, way too easily. We quit at the first sign of resistance. We abandon our goals the moment things get uncomfortable. We tell ourselves we're being realistic when really we're just scared. And that's where a little bit of stupid grit becomes incredibly valuable. Let me give you a personal example. When I first started investing, I was putting in tiny amounts. We're talking a few $100s here and there. The numbers barely moved. It felt completely pointless. I kept looking at my account thinking, what's even the point of this? I came close to quitting more times than I care to admit. But then I sat down and actually ran the numbers on compound interest. Those tiny, seemingly meaningless contributions, if you keep making them consistently for 20, 30 years, they turn into something absolutely massive. The early years feel like watching paint dry, but the growth is exponential. And most people, most smart people, never stick around long enough to see it happen. Here's the thing about intelligent people. They analyze their early results. They see the slow progress, and their brilliant minds convince them that this strategy isn't working. So they switch to something else, then something else, then something else again. Meanwhile, the person with stupid grit just keeps plugging away, month after month, year after year, not questioning, not overanalyzing, just doing. And that persistence, it eventually pays off in ways the smart people never get to experience because they already moved on to their fifth, better strategy. In real life, stupid grit looks like applying to the same company over and over until someone finally gives you a chance. It looks like continuing to dollar-cost average into index funds even when every headline is screaming that the market is about to crash. It looks like volunteering for the boring, thankless projects at work until leadership simply cannot ignore your contributions anymore. Does authentic grit matter? Absolutely. But when the stakes aren't life or death, sometimes a little stupid grit is exactly what carries you across the finish line while everyone else is still standing at the starting blocks perfecting their running form. Reason number 2. Average people jump headfirst into opportunities without getting paralyzed by analysis. I learned this lesson the hard way through a friend of mine who definitely wasn't what you'd call book smart. This guy struggled through high school, had an unremarkable college experience, bounced between steady but boring jobs for years. Then, one day, completely out of nowhere, he told me he was quitting his job to start a lawn care business. Not landscaping, not some fancy outdoor design company, just basic lawn care, mowing grass, trimming hedges, the simple stuff. I remember thinking he'd completely lost his mind. He didn't have a business plan, he barely had any savings, he had zero experience running a company. He couldn't even tell me his target customer demographic or profit margins. But here's what he did have that I didn't. He had the ability to act without overthinking every possible scenario. While I was still researching the best business registration websites and comparing liability insurance policies and reading reviews about accounting software, he was already out there cutting grass, making money, learning on the job. 6 months later, he had more clients than he could handle and was hiring employees. Meanwhile, I spent 2 years planning a side business that I never actually started. I had spreadsheets, market analysis, competitive research, a detailed 5-year projection, financial models that would make an MBA professor weep with joy. What I didn't have was a single paying customer, because I was still in the planning phase while he was out there actually building something. This pattern happens everywhere, and honestly, it's a little infuriating if you think about it too much. Smart people get stuck in what I call analysis paralysis. They want to research every angle, understand every risk, have a perfect plan before they make a move. They tell themselves they're being responsible, careful, strategic. But while they're busy creating the perfect strategy, less intelligent people are already out there making mistakes, learning from them, adapting, growing, building something real. I'm not saying you should make reckless decisions. I'm not saying ignore obvious red flags. But there's a massive difference between being cautious and being paralyzed by the need for certainty. The truth is, you will never have all the information you think you need. Never. At some point, you just have to take the leap and figure it out as you go. The graveyard of missed opportunities is filled with people who are almost ready to start. If this is hitting home for you, drop a comment below. Tell me about an opportunity you've been overanalyzing. Sometimes just saying it out loud is the first step to actually doing something about it. Reason number 3. People with average intelligence lean heavily on emotional intelligence. And it turns out that matters way more than anyone gives it credit for. There's research on this that genuinely blew my mind when I first discovered it. One study found that when it comes to business success, raw intelligence accounts for only about 10% of the outcome. 10%! But emotional intelligence? That explains somewhere between 85 and 90% of success. Let me put that in perspective. Being book smart might give you a slight edge, but your ability to understand people, manage your own emotions, build genuine relationships, navigate social dynamics, that's almost everything. And here's the beautiful irony. People with average intelligence often develop these skills out of pure necessity. They can't rely on being the smartest person in the room. They know they can't outthink everyone. So instead, they learn to connect, to listen, to understand, to make people feel valued and heard. What does emotional intelligence actually look like in the real world? It's having the self-awareness to recognize when you're in over your head and asking for help instead of pretending you know everything. It's staying calm when markets are crashing and everyone around you is panicking and making terrible decisions based on fear. It's having the internal motivation to keep investing, keep building, keep showing up, even when you don't see immediate results. It's developing the empathy to truly understand what your customers, clients, or business partners actually need, not what you think they should need, what they actually need. I used to think networking was just schmoozing and small talk. Honestly, it made me want to hide in a corner at every business event. But I realized pretty quickly that no matter how much knowledge I had about finance or investing or business strategy, none of it mattered if I couldn't connect with people and communicate those ideas in a way that resonated. Emotional intelligence is what gets you invited to opportunities you didn't even know existed. It's meeting a future business partner during a random coffee shop conversation. It's landing a better job because the interviewer felt a genuine connection with you, even though 3 other candidates had better resumes. It's convincing investors to bet on your idea because they trust you as a person, not just your business plan. Smart people often struggle with this. They assume their intelligence speaks for itself. They think if they just present the facts logically, everyone will obviously see their point of view. They get frustrated when people don't immediately recognize their brilliance. But that's not how humans work. We make decisions based on emotions first, then we justify them with logic afterward. If you can't connect emotionally, your brilliant ideas will fall on deaf ears every single time. Reason number 4 might be the most important one. Smart people are absolutely terrified of looking stupid. Average people, they have nothing to lose. Think about this for a second. If you've been labeled as gifted or intelligent your entire life, your whole identity becomes wrapped up in being smart. Making a mistake doesn't just hurt your bank account, it feels like proof that you're not as brilliant as everyone always told you that you were. taking a risk that fails isn't just a learning experience, it's a threat to your entire sense of self. That fear of embarrassment can be completely paralyzing. You avoid taking chances because what if people find out you don't know everything? You stay in safe, predictable paths because what if your big idea flops and everyone realizes you're not actually a genius? You'd rather do nothing than risk being wrong. This creates a prison of perfectionism that's almost impossible to escape. Meanwhile, people who were never praised for their intelligence growing up don't have this burden. Maybe they were called hardworking, or kind, or persistent, or maybe they were even teased for not being the sharpest knife in the drawer. But here's the beautiful irony. Since their self-worth was never tied to being smart, they have absolutely nothing to prove and everything to gain. This is where what I call the let them mentality becomes incredibly powerful. Instead of worrying about what others might think, you simply let them think whatever they want. Let them think you're making a dumb decision. Let them laugh at your business idea. Let them doubt your investment strategy. Let them roll their eyes when you tell them your plans. While you're focused on letting them think whatever they want, you're free to actually pursue the opportunities they're too worried about appearances to even consider. Let me give you some examples that'll blow your mind. Remember the pet rock? Gary Dahl came up with this idea almost as a joke while complaining about how much work real pets required. He thought it would be hilarious to sell rocks as pets, complete with care instructions and a little bed made of straw. Most people would have been too embarrassed to actually follow through with something so ridiculous. But Dahl didn't care about looking sophisticated or intelligent. He leaned into the absurdity. He marketed these rocks as actual pets. He included training manuals. He made it fun. What seemed like the dumbest idea in the world ended up selling over 1.5 million pet rocks in just 6 months. He became a millionaire practically overnight from selling rocks. Then there's Steve Gadlin. This guy started a website called I Wanna Draw a Cat for You. His entire business model was drawing crude, simple cats for people in whatever style they requested and emailing them the results for $10 each. On paper, this sounds absolutely insane. Who would pay for hand-drawn cat pictures from some random guy on the internet? Well, it turns out about 19,000 people would. Over 3 years, Gadlin made over $300,000 from his cat drawings and related merchandise. His stupid idea even caught the attention of Mark Cuban, who invested in the business on Shark Tank. The pattern here becomes obvious once you see it. While smart people are busy maintaining their reputation and looking sophisticated and waiting for the right opportunity that won't make them look foolish, regular folks are out there testing weird ideas, discovering what actually works, learning from failure, building real businesses. They're not paralyzed by the fear of looking foolish because they never expected to look brilliant in the first place. What's the weirdest business idea you've ever had that you were too afraid to pursue? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. You might inspire someone else to actually try theirs. Reason number 5. And this one saves people an enormous amount of money. Average people aren't obsessed with prestige. Smart people love prestigious things. Elite universities, impressive job titles, luxury brands that signal their intelligence and success, exclusive memberships, the right zip code, the right car, the right watch. But here's the problem with chasing prestige. It's incredibly expensive, and it usually provides a terrible return on investment. Take higher education as an example. The average annual tuition at an Ivy League school is approaching $70,000. Meanwhile, you can get a solid education at a state university for around $10,000 to $15,000 per year. Community college is even less. That's a difference of $50,000 to $60,000 annually. Money that could be invested, used to start a business, put toward buying real estate, actually building wealth instead of buying a fancy name on your diploma. Imagine you're 18 years old, deciding between Harvard and your local state school. The smart kid chooses Harvard because of the prestige. They spend the next 4 years accumulating massive debt for a degree that research shows might not actually provide better career outcomes from most fields. The average kid chooses the state school. They graduate with minimal debt. They invest that extra money into index funds, or they use it to start a small business while their peers are still in class. Fast forward 20 years. Who do you think is in better financial shape? The Harvard graduate who's still paying off student loans and had to delay buying a home and starting a family? Or the state school graduate who's been building wealth since graduation and now has an investment portfolio worth 7 figures? The math isn't even close when you factor in compound interest and the opportunity cost of that debt. This same pattern plays out everywhere. I know a guy who dropped out of college to become a plumber. Not exactly the career path that gets you invited to fancy cocktail parties, right? Not the thing you brag about at high school reunions. But while his engineering classmates were graduating with $60,000 in student debt and fighting over entry-level positions that barely paid enough to cover their loan payments, he was already earning solid money, building a client base, learning his trade, developing real skills. 10 years later, this guy owns 3 plumbing trucks, employs a handful of people, makes more in a month than most of those engineers make in a year. He's not worried about impressing anyone with his job title. He's too busy depositing checks and planning his next vacation to care what people think about his profession. The smart people, meanwhile, are still climbing the corporate ladder, hoping that their next promotion will finally give them the respect and salary they think they deserve. Playing a completely different game, one where looking important matters more than actually building wealth. And this is the crucial difference. Average people focus on what works. They pick careers based on demand and earning potential, not on what sounds impressive. They buy reliable used cars instead of luxury vehicles they can't afford. They invest in boring index funds instead of trying to pick the next hot stock that'll make them look like a financial genius at dinner parties. They live below their means because they're not trying to prove anything to anyone. Smart people often get trapped by their own expectations. They feel like they should be driving a BMW because they went to a good school. They think they deserve a corner office because they have an advanced degree. They believe their intelligence entitles them to a certain lifestyle even when their bank account can't support it. And so they spend money they don't have, chase status they don't need, and wonder why they're still not getting ahead. Here's what's really wild about all of this. The traits that make people successful financially aren't complicated or mysterious. You don't need a PhD to understand them. Persistence, emotional intelligence, willingness to take action, focus on results over appearances, the ability to connect with people, the humility to ask for help. These are things that literally anyone can develop. But here's the catch. If you've been told your whole life that you're smart, it can actually be harder to develop these traits. You might think you don't need them because your intelligence should be enough. Or you might be so afraid of looking foolish that you never give yourself the chance to practice and improve. This is why some of the most successful entrepreneurs I know are people who struggled in school. They had to learn how to connect with people because they couldn't rely on being the smartest person in the room. They had to develop persistence because things didn't come easily to them. They had to take risks because playing it safe wasn't getting them anywhere. And once they developed these skills, their so-called lack of intelligence became completely irrelevant. In fact, it became an advantage because they weren't weighed down by the expectations and fears that hold back supposedly smarter people. So where does this leave us? Look, I'm not saying intelligence is worthless. Obviously, you need a basic level of competence to succeed in most fields. But the research is crystal clear. Once you hit a certain threshold, other factors become infinitely more important. And those factors have nothing to do with how well you performed on standardized tests or what your GPA was in college. The beautiful thing about this? It means financial success is available to pretty much everyone, regardless of where you fall on the intelligence spectrum. You don't need to be born with a genius-level IQ. You don't need to attend elite schools. You don't need to impress people with your brilliance. You just need to develop the right habits and mindset. Start taking action instead of endlessly researching and planning. Done is better than perfect. Focus on building relationships and understanding people, not just accumulating knowledge. Don't be afraid to look stupid if it means you might learn something valuable. Choose opportunities based on their potential returns, not on how impressive they'll make you sound at parties. Embrace the boring, the unglamorous, the things that actually work. And most importantly, stop waiting until you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. Nobody does. The people who succeed are the ones who start anyway. So here's my challenge to you. Think about one thing you've been overanalyzing, one opportunity you've been too scared to pursue, one action you've been putting off because you're waiting for the right moment. And just do it. This week. Not next month, not when conditions are perfect, this week. Because the uncomfortable truth is this. While geniuses are busy overthinking and protecting their reputation and waiting for certainty that will never come, regular folks are out there building wealth. Through persistence, through action, through good old-fashioned people skills, through the willingness to look foolish and learn from their mistakes. Maybe it's time to stop trying to be the smartest person in the room. Maybe it's time to embrace being average and start actually getting rich. If this video changed how you think about intelligence and success, smash that like button. It genuinely helps more people discover this content. Share it with someone who's been too afraid to take the leap, someone who's been stuck in analysis paralysis, someone who needs to hear that they don't need to be a genius to build the life they want. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one action you're going to take this week? I read every single comment and I want to hear from you. Remember this, the world doesn't reward the people who have the best ideas. It rewards the people who actually do something about them. Now go be one of those people. I'll see you in the next one.